ready to rock and roll, man. I'm excited for you to be here, Alec. I've been looking forward to this.
Yep, I've been looking forward to it as well. And, all of our conversations have been great, so I've been excited to talk to you on this.
Excellent. How do you pronounce your last name? Is it Musacchio?
Yep, so it's Alec Musacchio.
Musacchio. That's what I was afraid. I was on. It's either Musacchio or
Italian name.
No way, that's not Italian, is it? Dude, that last name is like prosciutto. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
I mean,
no, yeah, my family, we came to America in like the early 1900s and came right from Italy. So we've Americanized now, but it's a very Italian name, as you can tell.
is both sides of your family, mom and dad's side?
Yep. So obviously Musacchio comes from my dad's side, but my mother's side came from Sicily as well. So they both. I have a lot of Italian heritage, and a lot of people in Central New York came to Ellis Island, and there's a lot of Italians in this area. So upstate New York.
So hang on, I got to sneeze. Go, Louis. Okay. All right, since you brought up the Italian thing, and there's a lot of Italians living in Central New York. That's not Central New York City. That's Central New York.
Nope. Yeah. So I'll give you a little background. So I grew up in a city called Sherrill, New York. It's actually the smallest city in New York State. I think it might be one of the smallest cities in the country as well. It's only got a few thousand people that live in it, and it's really more of like a village, but back in like the 70s and so on, there was a big manufacturing plant there.
Okay.
It employed a lot of people. So I'm pretty sure that was the reasonings behind classifying it as a city. But yeah, it's in between like Syracuse, New York and Utica, New York.
Okay.
So we're about like 5 hours from New York City. So it's very rural, very flower country. It's really nothing like New York City, actually.
It's actually very beautiful.
Yeah, it is. That's the one thing. It's obviously not as populated as some of the big areas, but it's got a lot of great like geographic landscapes, and it's very hilly. It's a great place. Like where I am right now, it's right on a lake, so there's a lot of good views and stuff in this area.
What kind of fish you got in that lake there? I know you're going to have some walleye.
Yep, there's walleye, largemouth bass, all kinds of fish. And I'm not a fisherman myself, but there's always people out there, especially once it gets into the wintertime, people are ice fishing and all that.
So they do a lot of ice fishing out there?
Yeah.
Which is kind of freaky for me because I've got this like, holy crap, man. If you fall through the ice, of course, come January, that ice is probably a foot thick. You're as likely to fall through the asphalt as you are through that ice.
No, it's funny. In this area, you get about like 3 or 4 months of really nice weather, and then the rest of it's pretty gloomy. And then in the winter, it gets pretty intense in the winter time. Get a lot of snow, a lot of intense weather. But
it stays cold. It never really warms up during the winter time, right? I mean,
no, you get all the seasons here. That's for sure.
Yeah. Exactly. Beautiful falls though. Lots of nice color up there.
Yep. No, I've lived in this area. It's Oneida County, New York. So it's like the Mohawk Valley region. So it's about like an hour and 50 minutes from Albany, which is the state capital.
Yeah.
So it's been a great place to grow up and live. And if I can, I would stay in this area. I've always enjoyed it. So,
well, you're going to have a full-fledged flying freak of a communist running the largest city in America, but like you said, 6 or 7 hours from you.
That's the other thing about where I'm from. It's when people think of New York State, they obviously think New York has historically been very blue and very Democrat, but where I'm from in upstate New York, it's actually a very conservative oriented state. There's a lot of gun owners, a lot of small business owners. So there's a lot of where I live. It's Oneida County. It's about 70-30 in favor of more conservative ideals, I would say. Yep. So even though our state representatives are obviously more progressive, when it comes to like the local government stuff, we're pretty heavily Republican in this area. But obviously, it's a battle having to deal with laws and stuff coming out of Albany. But there's a lot of people just wouldn't think of it, but in upstate New York, there's a lot of Texas type values in upstate New York that you wouldn't think of. So,
Absolutely, there is up there around the Finger Lakes.
yeah, not far from there, and a lot
You're
of
surprised I knew about the Finger Lakes, aren't you? You're like,
yeah.
you're right now. You're thinking, "Gee whiz, man, is this guy from New York? You know what's going on up here?"
And there's a lot of history in this area. So I mean, it's obviously one of the original 13 colonies. So there's
Right.
a lot of history, and there was a lot of Revolutionary War battles up in this area. Not far from where I live, Oriskany, New York. Oriskany, New York is where one of the bloodiest battles in the Revolutionary War took place. It's not far at all from me. So there's the people in this area, they really embrace that history. So there's a lot of like founding fathers historical memorabilia in this area, and a lot of people are flying like the Betsy Ross flag and the Don't Tread on Me flag and the American flag. So it is a very patriotic culture in this area of the state, definitely.
Yeah, you guys get a really bad rap because of New York City. Because obviously, when
Yeah,
people hear New York, they just think about New York City, and they don't realize that the vast majority of New York's a big state. Did
it
you know that
is.
New York has the largest national park in the entire United States?
I didn't know that, but it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah,
Um,
what's the name of it? It's that huge. I mean, it's bigger than Yellowstone.
yeah, I'm sure if you
Oh,
said it, I would know, but
God, I can't think
yeah,
of the name right now.
there's just a lot more up here than people would think, and then you got like Buffalo. There's a lot of stuff, and we're right near the Canadian border, so you have like Niagara Falls and all that
Yep,
stuff. So
yep.
there's a lot of cool things up in this area. But I know, and it's funny going back to like the political side of it. In my mind, I've always like thought like Washington D.C. is a district. It's like the District of Columbia. I almost wish New York City was like that because we have such different values than New York City and upstate. It's almost like two separate states, but there's so many people in the city area. It just kind of it overwhelms the state politics in this region of the country. But there'll always be people who are into the Constitution and into gun rights and are more conservative and will be fighting back against over the top left wing policies. But there's always patriots out there, no matter what state you're in, even if it's California or New York or wherever it is.
Exactly. Now, one thing I must ask, because with the last name, the Italian heritage, living in a community that's heavily Italian, can we talk food for just a minute?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Now we're talking.
And
Now we're talking.
we
Yep.
have there's a lot of great Italian places. That's the main type of food here. So, and obviously a lot of pizza and pasta and stuff, but there's one dish. It's really an upstate New York thing. It hasn't really made it outside of. It's not even in New York City. It's called chicken riggies. It's like it's obviously just pasta and chicken, but you have like a unique vodka sauce in it and stuff. But there's a lot of great Italian food up in this
So
area.
go into this chicken. What do you call it? Chicken what?
Chicken riggies.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about this. This
So
sounds
it's all it is it's just rigatonis and chicken, but the uniqueness to it is it has there's like a unique sauce that people use, and it's like a mixture of a lot of different
is it a
ingredients.
white sauce or a red sauce?
You can do it differently. It's more of like a vodka sauce.
Okay, okay.
So it's like orange red, but everybody makes it differently. But that's the one good thing about our area. There's a lot of great food. And there's also something called it's called Utica greens. You've probably
Okay.
heard of obviously like collard greens. It's a
Sure,
southern thing.
sure. Yeah.
Up here we don't really have collard greens. We have something called Utica greens, which it's different, but it's more of a upstate New York thing, and it's another good dish that's exclusive to this area.
Really.
There's
So
a lot of good food.
on your pizza, what describe your pizza? What's unique about the pizza there in the area?
Um,
Have you guys been visited by Dave Portnoy? Has he been through town?
yes, he has.
Okay. What kind of scores were you getting there?
He went. So one of the places he went to, it's in Utica, which isn't far from where I live. It's I've gone there a number of times. He gave it like a 7 something, but it's a lot of the pizza in this area. It's thin. A lot of it's thin pizza, like New
Okay.
York pizzeria style. But
Right.
and then it's not like you're not going to come here and get like a Chicago deep dish or whatever.
Right. 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 Right.
But Yeah, Portnoy's been to a couple of places because I think he was in the area for like a some Syracuse
Probably
college
for some
event.
college game. Yeah, that
And
makes sense.
that's another thing. It's in this area, like Syracuse University, their sports, it's like it's a huge deal in this area. It's too bad their basketball team isn't as great as they used to be, but their football team they're doing okay. But Syracuse University and the sports is a big culture in this area, big part of it.
Interesting. Very interesting. Well,
Yeah,
I'm kind of a foodie, and I love Italian food, but good Italian food, not
yeah, you'll
not
get it up here.
I mean, like the traditional, the fresh ingredients, the love, I mean, just the stuff that real Italians that are into food, you
Yeah,
just you just can't get that anywhere else.
yeah, and it's in this area. Like I said before, it's just back in like the early 1900s. A lot of Italians they went to Ellis Island, obviously, and then a lot of them migrated more up north, more into the state, and so obviously now there's all kinds of, it's not just Italians, there's all kinds of people that live in this area, but there's just there's a rich history with Italians coming to upstate New York, and it goes back to Ellis Island, and there's a lot of cool history to it.
You know, it's interesting. Immigration is on everybody's. Now, I take that back. Everybody's too broad term. Immigration is on a lot of people's minds today. Obviously, there's legal immigration, there's illegal immigration, there's all kinds of there's.
Yep.
Anyway, and you know, we tend to think. Obviously, immigration is completely out of control. And
Yeah.
America's in big trouble because of not only out of control illegal immigration, but I'm also saying that it's illegal, also out of control legal immigration.
Yeah,
And
there definitely is.
we,
Yeah.
we brought in legally, we brought in a ton of people. You know, when your great great grandparents immigrated to America and came to Ellis Island, what a lot of people don't understand, the difference between legal immigration today that I see and legal immigration when your great great grandparents came in. My great great grandparents came from Germany about the same time your great great grandparents came from Italy.
Yeah.
And the difference one of the biggest differences I see today is the immigrants that come legally to America today. They want to bring their country with them.
Yeah, and
They're
that's
more
it.
loyal to they're more loyal to their country that they left
Yeah.
than
And
they
I
are
write
to
about this
America.
in my book, The Struggle for America. I do a whole chapter, a big section devoted to the immigration issue, and I do think it's highly important that if you're going to come to this country, it's assimilation has to be structured into it, and it's because the whole point, if a lot of people are coming here and the whole point of coming here is you want to embrace the American culture, and the last thing we would want is to have, it's good to have different cultures coming in, but you everybody should be identifying as an American and sticking up to those like rugged individualistic liberties that we were born with in the 1700s and stuff. And I tackle this issue a lot in my book because it's, I mean, when Biden was in office, it's, some people say 20 million or so illegals came in, and it's almost like it was like a forceful, over the top entrance of just, and a lot of those people unfortunately were violent criminals. Not all of them, obviously, but if you let so much unchecked migration, it can lead it can lead economically, it can cause chaos, and it can cause chaos in terms of law and order, and it's unfortunate. It's not radical to say that there should be a crackdown on illegal immigration, obviously, and it's obviously impacted you a lot because you're right in Texas, but they've made it to all 50 states, and I'm up in New York, and we've had issues in New York for with the issue of illegal immigration, and it was, the big issue was, it wasn't just people from South America and Mexico coming up. It was a lot of people from, like, there was reported terror cells from the Middle East that came up through the border, and so it's vitally important to have a sovereign country. You have sovereign borders, so making sure that illegal migration is in check is obviously a priority. And legal immigration is okay, but you need to make sure people are assimilating and they're embracing the American culture, so we can continue to have the republic that we were were born with 250 years ago. But yeah, it is definitely a hot button issue, that's for sure.
Well, it's destroyed our country is what it's done. I don't know if we can recover from it or not. What a lot of people don't understand is, the immigration that came through Ellis Island through that generation, post-war of Northern aggression. What a lot of people don't understand, those people were coming here. And first of all, they weren't coming for benefits. They weren't coming for EBT cards. They weren't coming for free health care. They weren't coming with anything in mind of, okay, we're going to get this and we're going to get that. A lot of them came with the clothes on their back. They got here. Some of them didn't know anybody. They live impoverished. They live incredibly difficult lives, worked extremely hard. And, what I find interesting is a lot of the folks, and I can speak for my family that immigrated here, at least on my mother's side, back around the same time, right before World War II, actually between World War I and World War II, they were like, we're in America. We speak English. It wasn't that they were ashamed of their German heritage, but they embraced Americanism. They go,
and they saw there's always been so much opportunity here, whether it's economically or just culturally. And the same thing with my family. Like on my father's side, the Musacchio name, they obviously came from Italy, but they Americanized intensely. And as the generations went on, like my father, for instance, Rick Musacchio, he really embraced that American culture and he became he embraced that free market capitalism idea. And he's always been an entrepreneurial type. So it's a good thing when families come over here, as the generations go on, if they're embracing the idea of creating a small business and contributing back to the economic just well-being of the nation, and as opposed to living on benefits and all that stuff, which hurts the American taxpayer, obviously. But yeah, like a lot of my inspiration for this book actually came from my father, because when I was a little kid, I got to see him from the ground up. He started a business with my uncle, and just through hard work and just competitive, just entrepreneurial drive, they turned it into a very successful business. And then my father was able to sell it and build our house, and he was able to sell it and do very well for himself. So I've been able to see that the beauty of free market capitalism, which is obviously an American ideal. And that goes to another big part of the book, what I wrote about the importance of the policy of lower taxation and less government regulation, just getting the stranglehold of big government off of the average person, off the average family. It can really help them innovate and just contribute better and have more money in their pocket and create a better American society, as opposed to people who some people obviously need welfare, but if they're staying on it their whole lives and stuff, it becomes a burden, and it leads to stagnation, not success in terms of a country's ability to rise up in the political order and so on. But yeah, there's a lot of different things. It's all pretty cool.
You say something very interesting. So, and this is a question I ask people, because this is a hot topic. All the EBT card holders and everything are planning on rioting and stealing from Walmart like they aren't already stealing. I hear this a lot from people, and this is my question. So I hear people say, some people need welfare, things like that. And my question to that is what did Americans do before welfare? Did we have a bunch of Americans starving to death?
And that's goes back to the point of, I think, the unfortunate thing of just over the top welfare and stuff. It doesn't incentivize people to go out of their way and to create work and to get jobs and to succeed and to thrive in society. The biggest issue with big government programs, I think, is it can just lead to you resting on your laurels and just laying back and not being incentivized to go out and work and contribute for your society and family. So I think that's the biggest issue with it. But back in the day, before that stuff, people were obviously, they were making it work somehow. They were going out and doing the right stuff. They were making their families, they were putting food on the table, and they weren't letting that goes back, the title of my book, The Struggle for America. I was kind of linking it to life in a sense is a struggle, but through resilience, you find ways to get through that. And I think that goes to the issue of big government versus limited government. The whole concept of believing in smaller government is so the powers to be can't keep you down. And so you can just, the average citizen can have more power as opposed to the bureaucratic state in the government, which can take a lot of money from you. And they think that they know what the average citizen wants, but in reality, the average family throughout the country really know internally what they want as opposed to the government.
So as soon as you open that door, as soon as the government becomes a source for largesse, as soon as the government becomes a source where the treasury can be just opened a little for individuals. So let me ask you this: when a person receives a benefit from the government, when they receive a check from the government, when they receive health care from the government, Medicare, Medicaid, well, we can go down the list.
Yeah.
From whence does the government get that money?
It's a good question.
Where does it come from?
Well, it comes from the taxpayer.
And how does the government get the money from the taxpayer?
And well, that leads to the whole issue. It's all of these programs, they're being funded by the average American. And so it's when
the American lining up cheerfully on tax day or the end of every month
no.
Go, hey, where do I send my check? Or is there a hotline at the U.S. Treasury where people can call if they're having a hard time getting their funds transferred to the government out of their pocket? Are there a lot of people concerned about being able to get enough money out of their bank account and get it to the government as soon as possible? Because, is this a voluntary thing?
Well, it is, and I think it goes back to the founding of our country. The country was founded on heavy taxation and the rebellion against that, because the early colonists
wasn't that heavy. What was considered heavy in 1775?
It was, the tax rate.
4 cents on tea or something like that. 4%. I think it was a stamp tax, a tea tax.
So it was 4%. America was really built off of that spirit of you pay taxes for the important critical things like police and stuff. But once it gets over the top, it becomes sort of a robbery of the average citizen. And I think it's kind of what our country was built off of. And so the idea of taxation is theft and stuff, it's embedded in our conservative culture and so on, and our limited government.
Is it theft? Let's look at just simply the definition of theft. Is income tax, property tax, are these things? Is that theft? Would it fall in as a Merriam-Webster definition of what theft is?
It depends on who you're asking, I guess. What
would Merriam-Webster say? There's an organization or a group or a person that has a weapon that says, you either give me this money or we will lock you up or we will shoot you, or how do you think Merriam-Webster would define that?
How do you think?
I think it's theft. I think it's robbery.
And I agree with you. To an extent, I do think it is as well. And I think because a lot of times the more money that the government takes out of your pocket, it's just and a lot of times it's being spent on things that aren't great for the average American, and they get sent to these either progressive programs or programs overseas that aren't directly impacting the United States. And that's why I think it's crucial that for a society to really thrive on individualistic characteristics, you need to have a government that cherishes the average citizen and says, okay, I trust them with having lower taxation, and the more we take from them, obviously it creates a more distrust, and it can lead to negative things like the revolution in the 1700s and so on. So I'm right with you there with the whole concept of taxation is theft. It's and like I said before, obviously certain things it's obviously important for taxes, but it can get to a point where it's over the top, and it can kind of steal from the average citizen and hinder them and what they want to do with their own money, as opposed to having the government kind of just blindly hand it out to different entities that don't necessarily line up with people like us and our values.
So what is it exactly that the government is so much better than what the private industry can do? What do we need as far as what is, first of all, are things like property tax and income tax, is that constitutional?
And that's why, honestly, and it goes to a big thing, like where I live in New York, a lot of people have moved to Florida and Texas and stuff because of the better tax policies and so on. So it's a lot of people think things like that aren't constitutional, and it's kind of led to a fleeing of rational minded citizens from places like California and New York. So we've lost a lot of people to great states like Texas and Florida, and primarily because of tax policy and regulation policy as well. And in California, I think it's even worse. And you have people like Mamdani and stuff in New York City. They want tax rates up to I'm not an expert on the specifics of all the different types of taxes, but I've heard like 70% tax rates for certain things, and it gets to a point where it turns into a big government nanny state type of program. And that's why you get a lot of people. That's why you've seen a lot of people fleeing progressive states like the state I'm in, New York, and California for more conservative states like Florida, and where they want societies to have lower taxes on the average citizen. So and they don't emphasize the power of big government. They emphasize the power of the populace, and it's a lot of people have left New York because of what you're talking about.
Has the United States always had an income tax?
No, I believe it was in the a lot of money in the late 1800s and so on was raised through tariffs, I believe.
It was always tariffs. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the income tax came in the early 1900s, I believe, right?
1913, the same year that the Federal Reserve was created as a private.
Yeah, and that's
bank.
the Federal Reserve is a whole other issue. And I read a book with I'm a big fan of like Ron Paul and Rand Paul and the whole libertarian movement. And I know Ron Paul he wrote the book On the Fed, and so I'm not an expert on that issue, but there's a lot of patriotic people that I have faith in who have talked about the tyranny of the Federal Reserve, and the income tax, and the income tax. The founding fathers didn't create an income tax, so it's more of a modern thing, and we were a very rich country in the late 1800s and early 1900s just from tariff revenue alone, and obviously other things. And then I believe it was I think Woodrow Wilson was in office when the income tax took place.
Yeah, it was 1913, 16th Amendment. There was three crucial things that happened in 1913. The formation of the Federal Reserve was one.
Yeah.
The 16th Amendment, which I believe was never ratified. That's a little under the table. It was never ratified. The 16th Amendment was for the income tax, which, by the way, the income tax has been struck down no less than 25 times by the Supreme Court. Another little tidbit of information. The other thing that happened in 1913 was the ratification of the 17th Amendment, which what that turned into is it took the power of the state. It used to be, before the 17th Amendment, state legislators picked U.S. senators. U.S. senators were not elected by the general population. Very important, and a very important distinction between a constitutional republic and a democracy.
Yeah.
And you may sit here and go, that's really weird. You mean that people, no, you got to go back and you got to read the founders, and you got to find out why they did it that way. And it was brilliant, and it worked. It is. And it destroyed.
They didn't want, and it's the whole idea of having a republic. It's
exactly
because it cherishes the if somebody has a take on something that's it's an important take, but it might not be super popular with the majority of people, but they still are protected with that opinion and that policy. And that's the beauty of a republic. And it goes back to the whole electoral college versus popular vote thing. It's because if we just went off the popular vote, it would be city America that controlled the country, and it gives good abilities to rural areas, and it gives them just as much of a say as a place like Manhattan or so on. So it's there, and it's a lot of people they throw out democracy and stuff, but you got to go back to what we truly are, which is a constitutional republic. So, and there is some distinctions obviously, but the founders really were brilliant in their ability to articulate that through all the different documents that they created.
Yeah, they understood human nature, and they understood what worked long term and what didn't, and they understood the scientific experimental components to what they created.
Yeah,
when they came up with the Constitution. But 1913 was actually the year that the Republic officially died. That's when it was the first blow, of course, was during the War of Northern Aggression, and then in 1913, the final nails in the coffin to the Republic were placed with things like the Federal Reserve, 16th Amendment, 17th Amendment, things like that. 1913 was a very, very, very pivotal year.
Definitely.
And it opened up the floodgates for the amendments to the Constitution that came after that, which were all complete disasters.
And it led to the FDR era, which was
absolutely
a huge, just big government era, and eventually the Supreme Court became very progressive, and
communists were flooding in. The communists were it was a free for all. People just didn't.
It led to the whole era of just massive regulation, massive bureaucracy, higher taxes. It's like with somebody like President Franklin Roosevelt, like the good thing about him was he got us through the war and stuff like that. But unfortunately, a lot of his big government policies created kind of the modern day liberal state that we see. And that goes with President Lyndon Johnson as well, with the Great Society and all that stuff. So a lot of big government policies from back in the 1900s have just kind of led to this bloated state of statism, almost, you could say, that we have in the country in many aspects.
Yeah, well, we see that on social media and things like that. You see, people. EBT is now in everybody's mind, and you see people say, well, some people, we've got to have food stamps for some people because some people, they use terms like deserve it, or they need it, or they, and I'm going to call BS Barbara Streisand on the whole thing, because I simply ask, what did Americans do before food stamps? What did they do? Are there pictures anywhere that we have starving, bloated, fly-infested Americans lining streets, starving to death because we didn't have welfare or food stamps? Is that even such a thing? Even during the Great Depression.
Yeah.
No, it was never a thing.
And I think it goes back to just a difference between people like me and you and people who value big government and stuff. They put a lot of their value in the state, and we put a lot of our value in our own families, in the individual, and our ability to go out and make something of ourselves, and to work hard and stuff, so we can create conditions that are beneficial for it's like a relying on the family versus relying on the government type of attitude. And that it's where the big divide is, I think, in a lot of cases.
And what people are learning today is if you want to put your faith in the government instead of God, feel free to do that. But then when the government says, "Oh, no EBT for you,"
it becomes tyrannical very fast.
No, it is tyrannical.
Yeah,
it's there. We are living in tyranny, because here's the deal: when you decide that you've had it, and you're watching all these TikTok videos of all these people demanding their EBT.
And
they're saying, if you don't turn my EBT card on come tomorrow, which is November 1st, they're going to loot stores. They're going to come to you in the parking lot of Walmart, and they're going to, the basket of groceries that you bought with your own money, they're going to take that from you. And they're
And
going to
it
demand that.
creates, yeah, and it's created a just an entitlement aspect of society, which is, if you're entitled, you're the opposite of innovative. And when you have a society that just it embraces heavy taxation, heavy regulation, just giving out benefits to everybody, including illegals when they don't necessarily need them. If that just gets out of control, which you could argue it's out of control just when it begins, it creates a very stagnant society, and I think it bleeds over, and it creates a less economically driven society. It weakens your military. It hinders all aspects of government that are essential to make sure the United States stays the top, like, hegemonic power in the world. And if you have a bunch of entitled citizens and illegals who come here just for free stuff, it's not gonna incentivize a resilient nation. So
No, it destroys, and it destroys the soul. And what
yeah,
I
it's like
mean by
it
that
kills it
is,
from within. It's like death from
well,
within.
there's a spiritual component here. So in the Bible, it says God loves a cheerful giver. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, when you write your check to the IRS, are you a cheerful giver? Because I hear people say this. Well, you're giving money, the government's taking care of it. No. You're not a cheerful giver. In fact, you're not giving your money to the IRS.
Uh-huh.
When's the last time you gave your money to the IRS? I'm going to say you probably never voluntarily gave your money to the IRS. What did they do? Under threat, they said, you'll give us this money.
Yeah.
Didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. You sign a piece of paper. It says, if you do something wrong in the amount that you give them, you can lose your liberty. They will lock you in a cage.
Yeah.
That's a threat. There's no cheerful giving in any process whatsoever where people are paying their income tax or their property taxes. There's no cheerful giving. So we're violating scripture. We're violating a spiritual law. Number two, let's say, Alec, because you're a nice guy, and you, let's say it's Thanksgiving time, and you want to volunteer some of your time, and you want to go and find some people that are needy in your community or wherever they might be. And you want to say you find 3 families and you want to buy them a nice Thanksgiving dinner and deliver it to them and say, hey, God bless you. We just want to do something for you all. You guys are, you may have fallen on some hard times or whatever. And you're going to bless them with some food for their family for Thanksgiving. Yep. Okay. I think everybody can agree that is noble. That is wonderful. I think that you can agree. Maybe this is something you've done in the past. Do you feel good when you do something like that?
Yeah, it makes you feel better, definitely.
You're blessed. Okay. One of the things is that you're blessed. Now that doesn't mean that you're going to get a private jet because you did that. What I'm saying is when you are a cheerful giver and you take your time and resources and you personally out of your own pocket, your own time, you do something for somebody that may be on hard times. I don't disagree. There are people that have hard times. There's horrible things that happen in our communities. There is poverty. There's people that get sick. There's these things do happen.
Yeah.
But what God does is he provides an opportunity that you and we have opportunities now that we can go and bless those folks. And in turn, we get blessed. So
yeah, it boosts your morale.
It boosts your morale. It makes you a better person. It sets a great example. It creates a better bonded community. It creates a stronger culture. It improves everything. Now,
and that type of stuff, that can create a ripple effect throughout society, and other people can do it. And it's much better to have a society of citizens like that as opposed to people that just sit back and take whatever and do whatever the government says, as opposed to going out on their own through their own free will in a spiritual sense and so on to better people's lives and stuff like that.
Because what happens when the government takes your money, we've established now that when the government takes tax money, that is theft, or that is robbery, or that is some people it could be hijacking, but that's what the legal term is that's theft. So they're stealing your money. You're not voluntarily giving that.
Yeah, they're hindering your liberties for sure.
Okay. Now, when you if you were to go and let's say your neighbor had more than you do, and you've got this twisted, weird thing, and you weren't raised right, and you said, they've got plenty, I'm going to go over and steal some of their money or their stuff. Let's say you go over there and you steal some of their stuff. Now you've got stolen stuff. You are now officially, you are a thief. And then let's say you talk to your neighbor and you say, hey, look at this cool TV. I stole it from the Joneses. You know, the rich ones they don't need this. I stole it from them. Here, I'm going to give it to you. And your neighbor takes that. By definition, by the law, morally, ethically, spiritually, is that person now a thief?
Yeah.
Yes, they are. Under the law,
Yeah.
you go to jail for that.
Definitely.
If you knowingly take stolen merchandise, stolen money, stolen anything, you are now a thief. You were part of the crime. You go to jail for that.
Yeah.
So when we look at our society, the way it works, the government steals money from me, from you. They take that stolen money. Everybody knows it's stolen.
Yeah.
And they give that, whether it's in healthcare, whether it's in food stamps, whether it's in housing, they take the stolen money and they give those stolen services or stolen money to another person. What happens to that person that knowingly receives the stolen merchandise or stolen funds? What are they now?
They're a part
thief.
of the part of the issue.
Oh, yeah, no, they're a thief. That's what they are. They're bad. They're bad individuals. They're thieves, is what they are. So in the scenario where the government is EBT cards, quote unquote, taking care of people, what are they actually doing?
They're really just they're incentivizing more criminal action.
They're thieves. They're creating thieves. Is anybody?
And it makes patriotic people. It gives them a huge sense of disdain, and it's stuff like that that can lead to violent altercations because they're disincentivizing citizenship and they're encouraging bad behavior as opposed to patriotic type behavior.
Well, when you get a bunch of thieves, what do thieves do? We're seeing that. What are these people on EBT saying right now? They're saying it on.
They're gonna commit violence if they don't get their benefits.
Exactly. Now, do people who receive the turkey dinner from you and your family when you go by and you bless them, do we see that behavior from people like that? No, because they're not thieves.
No.
See, this is the problem, and this is what people are failing to understand. And this is why I correct people all the time when they say, well, some people, they deserve, this healthcare, free healthcare, they deserve food stamps, or they deserve. No. Nobody, no, because you're making them a thief.
Yeah, it's at the expense of a law-abiding American citizen.
You're taking stolen funds.
Yeah, definitely.
Taking stolen funds. So nobody gets blessed. Your community, your culture does not improve because see, when people are voluntarily doing things like that, your culture improves. It gets better. It gets enriched. It becomes tighter. Now, when those people that received that charity from another person that, was blessed and went to them, now when they come out of their hardship, guess what they're going to be? They're going to be better people. So, and people say, well, if there was a God, why did he create poverty? Well, God didn't create poverty, but let's just go along with that.
Yeah.
God set up a system where all of us have an opportunity to bless one another. But when the government gets involved, guess what the government does? Every time the government gets involved in anything and everything, it always says, it destroys. It destroys. The founders knew that governments destroy, including this government.
And it leads to a society where only like a handful number of people are in charge. They have all the power, and that's the whole ideals of Marx with the Communist Manifesto and all that stuff. It's like they try to brainwash the average worker into thinking and to hate on the successful rich person, but at the end of the day, it creates a society where it is thievery, like you said before, and it's not doable, and it's not workable to have a society where the government controls everything and so on, because it destroys entrepreneurship, it destroys innovation and small business, and it's unfortunately you got to in the working class, and when it, like I mentioned Karl Marx, they try to convince the working class that it'll solve all their problems, but in reality, it creates more poverty, more chaos, and it leads to millions of people dying. As in Mao's China, millions of people died from famine and starvation due to communist policies.
Yes, real
Stalin,
famine, real
in
starvation.
Stalin's Soviet Union, off of communist policies,
30,
millions
40
upon
million
millions.
people under Stalin were starved
Great
to death.
famine. Yeah, and it goes back to the government takes all the resources and it leaves the peasantry class or the average citizen out in the farmland. It leaves them with no resources. Then they become malnourished and they starve and then they pass away. And unfortunately it's a cycle. Every time you go down that route of extreme far left policies, it eventually leads to that. You get painted a utopia where everything is equal and everything is great, but that's just not the way the real world works. It leads to corruption and resources being given to a few people, and it leads to the drainage of the nation state economy, and it creates lower economic value. It creates depressions, and unfortunately it leads to death in certain situations. That's why you need a society, you need a country that values free market capitalism, that values allowing the average citizen to make their way without intrinsic, just neck choking regulations. And you need a society that values the individual, that doesn't value the state.
Yeah, you get out of the way of the individual. It is amazing what can happen. Because I ask people all the time, so what is the government good for? And people will name off, well, you got to have the government, for the military. And I'm go, really? You study the Revolutionary War? The private Navy did way better. Then people, during the 60s, we heard, the only way you can
the militias really created the republic in many ways.
Of course it did. And if you look at the Navy, the volunteer Navy did a lot. They don't teach us in school, in public school, because people would start realizing, oh, so the private, government.
And it's another interesting thing. I've just over the years, as I've taken in a lot of political content and stuff, I've heard a big reason. Obviously, the United States is a big country, but a big reason why so many foreign adversaries and foreign nations, they would never even think to invade our nation, is because we have such an armed citizenry. It's not only the government, the power of our military, but we have millions of Americans that are armed and ready to defend their property if a foreign threat came on to their land. So the fact that we have so much freedom, just obviously there's forces trying to take that away, but we have so much liberty from the Constitution and so on. The amount of firearms we have throughout the country from ordinary, typical, like patriotic citizens, it scares off tyrants from ever wanting to conquer our land, because they know, we'd have to get through their military, but we'd have to get through the millions of Americans that have firearms to protect their families. So it incentivizes protection when you give the rights to the average person.
Well, and if we wouldn't have lost our Second Amendment, which we lost our Second Amendment a long time ago, people, no, I can have a gun. The Second Amendment,
and in New York, it's really bad. In New York,
do I?
In New York State, it's really bad. It takes a really long time to get just a.
No, it's bad all over the entire country, including Texas and Florida, because I can't buy a grenade launcher. And under the Second Amendment, I have every right to own a grenade launcher. I have every right to own any sort of weapon that the government has. That's what the Second Amendment was. I
trust American citizens over government forces. So I agree with you.
Thank you.
If they can have it, why can't
we were supposed to have it? That was the idea behind the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment had nothing to do with deer hunting. It had everything to do, because in the Declaration of Independence itself, it gives us permission to overthrow our government when our government gets tyrannical, like it is now.
The whole point was give the citizenry the power so the tyrants can't overtake.
Exactly.
That was the whole purpose.
They work for us. As soon as the politician, the political class thinks that we're the peasants and they're the ones that, we got to say yes, sir, no, sir, and be respectful. And we got to, no. They work for us. Those senators and congressmen should be referring to us as sir and ma'am. And how can I help you? And what do I need to do? If we don't bow our knee to them, we fought a revolution over this crap. But
Yeah.
Americans gradually over time, because we buy little lies that are all propagated through the public education system. That's a
Yeah.
whole nother topic, but that's how it's done. We've
Yeah.
now
And
turned
it's
in, our communists are running the show. And so
and
what does it
getting
culminate at? It
getting to the
culminates in people
education.
with EBT cards saying, when my EBT cards runs out tomorrow, when I catch your family in the Walmart parking lot, I will kill them to steal their groceries. That's what it culminates into.
Yeah,
Now, this is a real threat. And watch what
definitely.
starts happening. It's
No, I know.
going to happen.
I know.
Mark my words.
And
It's
it
going
creates,
to
and
happen.
it goes back to history, because when the Soviet Union was created in the early 1900s, the Bolsheviks, or the communists, they took over they overpowered the Russian czars through violent force.
Sure, they
And
didn't kill them.
it always it starts with small groups of people looting, committing violence, and it turns into a nationwide revolt, and it can lead to the implementation of Leninist communist style policies. And a lot of times it starts through violence. And it, like you mentioned, the education system, I'm perfect to talk about this, because I mean, I'm 25, so and I'm in my master's program, so I'm in the college system right now. And personally, I like the people I go to school with. They're nice, but the culture it's very pro big government, and it completely frowns upon expressing limited government perspectives. And I really think our universities have been taken over by far left radical forces, and you're almost indoctrinated to believe. You're not indoctrinated to believe in an American citizenry. You're taught to believe in a world citizenry. So and all these like international affairs classes and stuff, you're taught to value the power and the insight of the United Nations over the United States, and you're meant to think of the European Union and NATO and all these international organizations as more powerful organizations than the insight of the American citizen. So I think a lot of the big reason I think our universities have kind of taught a lot of people to trust in internationalism over nationalism. And not that I don't think the UN or stuff like that should be abolished, but you can't have a society that values budgets and policies that from a faraway international group, as opposed to the people that are actually in your own nation. And I think the educational system it's trained a bunch of young Marxists in a lot of sense. And there's obviously people like me at colleges, and there's libertarians, limited government conservatives, people that want American nationalistic just patriotism back, but it's not coming from the higher ups. The higher ups teach you to embrace income taxes, to embrace higher taxation, higher regulation, to embrace spending all of our tax dollars overseas so we can build a utopia in different countries. They really miss the concept of putting your country first. And it's another big issue with our nation, I think, is the corruption of our educational institutions.
Well, the public education system was set up to do exactly what it's doing. It was set up by communists for communists to propagate communism.
And a lot of our educational results have declined since we've propagated like a federal Department of Education and so on. We've really dropped in our ratings.
It actually started with the very first public school system in Maryland. I'm sorry, Massachusetts. The literacy rate in Boston, Massachusetts. When was the first school? We got to go back to Horseman. Anyway, it was in Boston, the very first public schools.
Yeah.
And the literacy rate at the time in Boston was 99%. The following year, after public education started, literally the following year, and it wasn't all through Boston, but it was just that area in Boston, literacy rate dropped by 1%. And it's been dropping ever since.
Yeah, and it's a lot of it bureaucrats in DC. They think bureaucrats in DC know better than the local people about their own education. And
well, this was before this is 100 years before the feds got involved with public education. This was
Yeah,
purely
I
at
got
the local level. But public education was designed for one thing and one thing only. I
make
would
you
recommend
survive.
there's a great great author. His name is John Gatto, Gatto, another great Italian actually from
Yeah.
New York. Have you
Yeah.
heard of John Gatto?
It sounds familiar, but I don't think so. I'm not sure.
Well,
Maybe.
I highly recommend you get his books. He wrote several. One of them was the Weapons of Mass Instruction. He was a award-winning public school teacher in New York City for over 30 years, and he won all the awards, including Teacher of the Year multiple times. Incredible. And he had an epiphany when he saw what was going on, and he started doing some little bit of homework, little research, and he started looking into public education, its origins, how it got started, what it was doing, what its mission was. And now he's exposed. I think he's passed away now. He passed away just recently, but I would recommend you get his books. They are fascinating.
And it's a ripple effect, like I said, because it's like you have people that are illiterate, and it's in a lot of these cities, it's caused massive spikes in crime and fentanyl overdosing and just drug issues. It's if you have bad education, which it's basically state-run education, it's obviously not going to be great. They're not going to care as much about the student. It's going to just lead to the society. And that's why I think a lot of our cities, you see poor education, you see high crime. And a lot of these teacher unions, they're in the benefit for themselves. They don't harp on the importance of the student. So they oppose school. It's like, why would you oppose school choice? If anybody should have the ability to pick what school they go to, but it might hurt the teacher union. So I think a lot of our priorities with stuff like that, they're just in the wrong place. They're not with the student. They're more embracing the power and the size of that government entity or that force that's in favor of federally funded education and so on.
I think they're focusing on the student way too much, because what their focus is to turn students into communists. Are they?
Yeah, and I agree with that.
Are they doing that? Are they effectively doing that?
I would say so. I would say
they're winning. They're doing exactly what the public school is intended to do.
And it's the only time it seems like the only time when I meant with the student, I meant the whole issue around this whole issue around school choice and charter schools and stuff. It's like they get upset if you don't want to take your kid out of a horribly run public school and bring them to a better school. But definitely the indoctrination. And I in my book, The Struggle for America, I did a whole chapter on how the education system has just been indoctrinated to embrace left-wing policies, and it's just incentivized a culture of, because there's a lot of just the research that people do in these colleges. If they do research on foreign affairs and stuff, they'll do research on race and foreign affairs, or on feminism and foreign affairs. Like they're completely missing the big picture. The whole point of studying about foreign conflict or foreign affairs is so you can enhance the national security of the United States. It's not so you can cater to some identity politics constituency in the United States. And I just think academia, they're very caught up in making sure they don't offend anybody and making sure everything is progressive. But if you're a conservative on a college campus and you make it known, you'll be chastised, you'll be driven out. And in the instance of somebody like Charlie Kirk, you could even be killed. So there's got to be a pushback in academia to embrace limited government, to embrace a society that values the Constitution, that values traditional values, and the whole ideals of small business and incentivizing capitalism and so on. And I think there is a lot of the students, a lot of people my age are very conservative. So I think there is, after years and years of indoctrination, I think a lot of kids are sick of it. So I think there is a pushback with the progressive left in colleges and stuff, but it's definitely a battle, that's for sure. And I think the colleges are a main reason why there's been an increase in socialistic left-wing radicalism. I think a lot of that has to do with the academic institutions and other institutions in the country as well.
Anything run by the government?
Yeah.
That's what this government is about. It's
And a lot of the institutions, their research, it's most of it's funded by the government. So you have these
or
out
the
of touch.
Tide Foundation or the Rockefeller Foundation.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's all.
And you have these non-governmental organizations or these who work directly with
Yeah.
left wingers in government, and they fund certain research. And throughout all the academic literature I've read through, if you're a conservative, if you're a populist and anti-elitist, they automatically label you as like an alt-right Nazi sympathizer. It's like it's symbolic labeling of anybody who, and you don't have to be a radical. You can just be a traditional, just conservative who wants lower taxes, who wants energy independence, just a typical Republican voter, and they'll label you as a sympathizer to some sort of tyrannical government just because you're not a progressive liberal. So it's unfortunate where a lot of the education has gone in this country, but there's a lot of people out there that are fighting back against it, which is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think people are there's some that are waking up. Of course, that was the other reason why they wanted to bring in, where we're 50 or 60 million illegal aliens now in the United States.
Yeah.
And to overwhelm the system, because these are all people that have no interest in saving the republic. They know nothing about
another issue is foreign countries like the Chinese and so on. They'll send basically operatives over here to our universities, and they'll steal our intellectual property.
They're all spies.
And they'll go back to China and work for the Communist Chinese Party. So that's another issue with foreign governments overseas utilizing spycraft to infiltrate our universities. And even up in New York State, there was a person who, they were working in the governor's mansion, working for the governor in Albany, and they were linked to the Chinese Communist Party, and they got caught. But that stuff I think that's going on all over the place, and I'm sure it's in DC as well, obviously. So that's another issue, not just the radicalization, but the foreign aspect of people who obviously don't share American or Western values trying to infiltrate our universities to make America more socialistic and less resilient in its traditional values. Definitely.
We had an active Chinese spy operating here in Montgomery County, and I was in contact with her on a regular basis, and she was trying to infiltrate a guy that was running for a congressional seat here at the time. And and she had she was University of Shanghai, also Columbia University. She was actually a spy. We ended up finding out, and I can't really reveal sources on that, but
and they use that information to build up the Chinese military, to steal our scientific research. They use it to benefit their society and their state, and they do it to basically annihilate the American society. So it's like the Chinese, they're the greatest thieves on the planet, and they're the second greatest hegemonic power in the world, the Chinese, and a lot of that has had to do with them stealing our and being thefts when it comes to American property. So that's another issue that's got to be dealt with in the not just academia, but all over the place.
No, it's exactly right, and it's very unfortunate. It's done tremendous damage to our country, and and now unfortunately we have a government that is completely tyrannical and has to be replaced, and we're in deep kimchi.
And it's at the end of the day, it's up to the average citizen to fight for their rights and to fight for their God-given liberties and so on. And it's interesting. It's why I love history so much, because it's back in the 1770s. I'm sure throughout the country and throughout the colonies, just typical men and women farmers just getting together and talking about the over-the-top policies of the British Crown, and it leads to that tyranny that it gets a society to realize that they got to fight back and get their rights back. And I think, and I agree with you in many cases, we're basically in that situation now. And but it's just, you got to hope everything stays. It doesn't. You got to hope society doesn't get violent, but it's just, you got to fight back for your rights at some point politically. But
well, I mean, that's that, and there's the fly in the ointment we're looking at right now is, how does a how does a citizen fight back? How do they do that if the government is now tyrannical, and it's not going to go back. There's never been in history a tyrannical government that ever went back to being non-tyrannical.
Yeah, they usually
Never
don't seize. They usually don't get rid of power on
They
their own.
usually don't. It's just they never have. There's not one
Yeah,
example in recorded history where that's ever happened, and it's not going to happen now.
you need a
So
populist uprising amongst the population, and definitely.
if you have a big enough population of people that are smart enough
And
and
that's why I wrote this book. The reason I wrote this book is because, I mean, outside of this stuff, I'm a pretty quiet guy. I'm not super combative, but I'm very passionate about my beliefs.
yeah.
And I love writing. So I figured, screw it, I'm going to write a book, and I'm going to write about public policy and give my take on why I think the country should embrace conservative values and so on. And if I can write a doctrine of that and just get it out to as many people as possible, it's my way of fighting back against the tyranny that the country's been under for a number of years. So people can do it through activism, through going out into the town square. But the best way, that's why I wrote this book, because it was an inspiration for me to just get my voice out there. And I do that best through writing, in my opinion. And I plan on doing this for the rest of my life. This is just the first of many books. And it's when I'm writing and I'm going through all this research about politics and stuff, I feel very alive. And it's because you're researching, you're better understanding your society, and you're better understanding political philosophy and how to deal with certain things. And it gives you a purpose. And that's why I really embraced this, writing this book, The Struggle for America. And I'm just glad that you guys have given me the platform and help me out with it. It's really been, it's been great. Just getting to start up with you guys.
Oh man, it's our pleasure. So what's the title of your book, Alec?
So the title is The Struggle for America. It's 27 chapters. I tackle taxation policy, regulation policy, the policy of how in the 90s under NAFTA, our country shipped a bunch of manufacturing plants and jobs overseas, and how we can get those jobs back and make sure America has an industrial base where we employ a lot of people and we don't have to rely on foreign countries for resources. I talk about the importance of the Second Amendment, the importance of not being overly reliant on foreign entities like the United Nations and NATO and so on, and having a strong military and a strong domestic landscape. And I talk about a lot of different things, and I go into the how our Justice Department was politicized in many instances, and how just typical not just President Trump, but typical conservatives and so on were essentially targeted by the FBI and by people in Congress, and how the average citizen wasn't buying that. And I go through a wide array of different political issues throughout the book, and it's really it's a doctrine on conservative America, and it gives a voice to flyover country, to rural people, and it's just a way of me getting it out there so people understand that even though the institutions might tell you that the whole country is progressive and wants big government, there's millions of Americans like me, like you, that want personal liberty, that want personal freedom, that want to live in a society where we have a government that's not out of control and that values the average citizen. So it's really 360 pages, 164 sources. So it's a really long research paper essentially, me giving my take on public events and so on. And I go into history also.
Let me ask you this, and because you're a young man, what impact has Charlie Kirk had in your life, and how did you know Charlie before he was taken from us? Or
Charlie Kirk is. I in my chapter when I write about the importance of having a patriotic education system and so on, I talk about Charlie Kirk specifically, and this was before he passed away, obviously. And I talked about his work on college campuses has really ignited a rebellion of like-minded patriotic voices throughout the country, especially on college campuses where it's so progressive and liberal. And Charlie Kirk, he gave his life for free debate and open discussion. And the biggest issue with him to people is he was a conservative, and that's not an issue. It's the way he saw the world. So I give a lot of credit to him in my chapter about the importance of having quality education and not indoctrinated education. And he's going to go down as a very iconic figure in the Patriot movement, I believe. And it's obviously a tragedy what happened to him, but I think his death and him being murdered I think it'll just make his message and his voice a lot bigger. And the amount of turning point chapters are just growing. And there's a lot of conservatives in the country, but on college campuses as well. And a lot of that goes to Charlie Kirk and the work he did. And he really gave his life for the country and for the patriotic coalition. So I have a lot of respect for Charlie Kirk, obviously. And he's with God now, but he did a lot of great work on this planet, and he was only here for 31 years. So I gave a lot of credit to him in my book. And when I was writing it, I obviously had no clue he was going to end up getting assassinated, but it's as sad as it was, it makes him more prolific and more iconic. Out of the tragedy there's hope. And so you need good education, and you're not going to get it with progressive indoctrination. So big fan of Charlie Kirk, and his legacy will obviously live on forever.
How about friends, colleagues, other college students? What have you heard from? What have you observed with the student body or other folks, just other guys your age, in light of what happened to Charlie and what's going on right now? What's the basic feel you're getting?
It's interesting because where I'm from, like I said, it's a rural area. So a lot of my buddies and people I hang out with, they're like-minded people. They're conservative, and they're not necessarily very politically inclined, but they don't like the idea of being robbed by the government. They want to have a free society. They don't want to have European style socialism. They want free markets, and they want opportunity, and they don't want to be incentivized to be on the government payroll and so on. So a lot of my buddies and who I know and who I'm friends with, they were and they weren't even necessarily very politically inclined, but they were very shocked by Charlie Kirk's murder. And it's interesting when somebody like that gets killed, the person who kills them, they're trying to silence them, but it just makes people like me and other people more radical in our beliefs and more in support of our conservative ideals. But it's interesting on college campuses. It's unfortunate, but it's just, unfortunately, the atmosphere on college campuses is, if you're not a far left progressive, then they kind of just, if something happens that's either positive for a conservative or tragic, like what happened to Charlie, they just kind of ignore it. And it's kind of a dehumanizing thing. And if he is brought up in those circles, which he has been and stuff, it was bad what happened to him, but he was a hateful person. So it's like they try to reason it out. And there's really a huge divide in this country, and a lot of it is the average rural flyover citizens versus the elite class, which with the elite class, I count that as the professors in academia, the PhDs, the mainstream media operatives at CNN and all over the place, all different types of outlets, and Hollywood and all the major institutions over the last 50 years that have just been harping on liberal ideals and so on. They're just completely out of touch with a large segment of voters and citizens in the country who are part of the flyover constituency, part of upstate New York, part of rural areas in Texas. And there's millions of Americans out there that want to see the country thrive in a populist, anti-elitist, libertarian, less government type of way. And there's just a big bridge between the divide with higher ups and young people like myself and people in rural areas. But yeah, his death definitely had a huge impact on the political discussion. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, incredible tragedy that I think God is using against the enemy in a much more powerful way than the enemy ever even imagined.
Yeah. And through the tragedy, it gives people like it inspires me to want to write more. So it's through that tragedy, it can inspire you to want to spread the message more and go out and fight for patriotic values more. So it's
interesting you say that, Alec, because Travis and I have been talking a little bit, and Travis has become very inspired. We were both very inspired by the untimely death, Charlie's execution, his assassination, and we're wanting to do something under the Defiance banner, the Defiance brand of a TPUSA type of organization, if you will. And we're looking, we want to recruit some leadership and some soldiers and some fighting men and young ladies. And we're really seriously looking at really doing this, moving forward with this. So I'm hoping that you might
there's definitely a need for it, and there's definitely a lot of people it's the thing about tragedy. Some people will whimper up and not go on, but others will get more inspired in their everyday battles with the issue. And it all goes back to our founding fathers. I think when they signed the Declaration of Independence, they knew they were signing. If they didn't conquer the British and get there and win that war, they would have been executed. So it's a lot of these things become life or death when it comes to dealing with geopolitics and so on. And in a situation like what happened with Charlie Kirk, it can lead to a lot of big voices rising and spreading the message even more so.
Exactly. And that's been all throughout history, in Christendom. Once Christ, they crucified Christ and he came back 3 days later. And, the Romans and the leaders of the Jewish religion and things like that, they thought that, by crucifying Christ, that would be that. And they'd have that behind them. And little did they know. Yeah, they weren't banking on 3 days later. And and so, obviously then the apostles were all very, very inspired and their lives completely radically changed, and then the world changed. And so what we're looking for leaders, we're looking for people, and the thing about it is what a lot of people also don't understand, when you look at the apostles, when you look at how they got started and by following, I've heard it put this way, is that they were responsibly irresponsible. We have two types of people today, especially with young people. Now, I am encouraged by the younger folks, and that would be your age group and down. I guess it's Gen Z. Is that the generation?
Gen Z. Yep.
I'm seeing a lot of very positive signs. I was very concerned, but I'm starting to see some things now that.
And I think there's a reason for that. I think, like me growing up, like I grew up, I was a little kid during like the war on terror, and I was a little kid when the 2008 recession occurred, and I was in college when COVID happened. So and especially COVID, a lot of kids throughout that coronavirus time, they witnessed the shutting down of society and the isolation, and it really impacted people my age negatively, and it led to a rise in suicide and drug overdoses and alcoholism, and that all came from massive government control. And the founders never said that if there's a pandemic, you have to completely end society. They dealt with pandemics in those days, and you obviously got to deal with them, but it's not right to allow the government to just dictate all policy. And they only gave power, and they utilized capitalism in a very crony capitalist way. They shut down churches, they shut down small businesses, but they kept open Walmart and Target and all the big vendors and so on. So a lot of people my age have seen massive government and what it can do. And it's inspired us it's really inspired, I would say, libertarianism. I would say just the whole concept of limited government. It's really inspired my generation, a lot of people in my generation, to embrace that, because we've seen the negatives of government strangulation, and most obviously during the coronavirus pandemic, where the economy and society was just completely destroyed for that time. And we got to witness all that.
So, we're seeing that, and we're seeing a lot of wonderful signs, and we're seeing some very encouraging things that are happening within Gen Z, but it's going to require some very strong men, to be quite honest. And unfortunately, we have a massive shortage of men in America. We have a lot of males. We have a lot of weak males, effeminate males, homosexual males. We have a lot of phrase I coined post-pubescent boys.
Yeah, no,
And
there's a problem with the feminization of our culture, definitely.
we've just, most people have never met a man today. I mean, it's crazy, but
Yeah.
so we're looking for some very, very special men, obviously, to lead this, and it's going to require a level of, like I said, I've already mentioned it once, but most people, they throw their lives away one of two ways. Either they're just irresponsibly irresponsible, they just do stupid stuff, and they just throw away their life. Other people, however, are responsibly irresponsible. And what I mean by that is they take no risks. They don't, everything is very calculated. There's no risks. But then you have people like, you look at the apostles, and I put them in a category of they were responsibly irresponsible. They did the most irresponsible. If you just look at it from societal, in other words, a guy shows up one day, they drop their fishing nets, leave their families behind, and they're gone. They didn't, nothing. It was the most irresponsible things that could be done. They did. And yet they changed the world.
Yeah. It's if you fight for something you believe in, it's worth it to go through the struggles and the short-term pain, because you're fighting for something greater than yourself. And that's a big reason why I wrote this book. It's not that I'm some special person, obviously, but I wrote this book because I'm passionate about what I believe in. And I was raised in a family where we love each other. We embrace the concept of the American family and the American ideal, and just creating a better future for the country. So that's why I wrote this book, because it's I know some people obviously wouldn't be a fan of the book, but it doesn't matter to me, because I'm fighting for something bigger than myself. And you see that throughout all different parts of society. And it's inspiring to see other people do that. And Charlie Kirk is an example of that. And you mentioned the apostles, another historical thing. It's the whole story around William Wallace of Scotland. He gave his life, the tyrannical British of the 1300s or so. He gave his life for Scottish freedom. And when he died, the English king thought that would end the freedom movement in Scotland, but it really just ignited more people to follow his suit after his death. So it's a lot of it comes, you just gotta, if you fight for something you believe in and it's worthwhile, it's meant to be. And it's okay if you have to go through a little bit of struggle for that. That's part of being a man.
Or you might have to go through massive struggle.
Yeah. And that's part of it. That's part of it.
You might give up your life. And this is the thing. And this is one of the things that I tell people is like, unfortunately, a lot of people, and this is the difference between men and males, or men and post-pubescent boys, men understand that it might require the life. It might require everything. It might require price that nobody else wants to pay. In fact, it's totally irresponsible.
Yeah. And there's a lot worse things than dying. Worse than dying is being afraid to do anything and not fighting for a cause because you were scared. That I'd rather go out fighting for something patriotic and what I believe in than just whimpering in fear. And I think that's a needed value in society. And it's that can create great nations. And it's what created the United States. And it gives hope to a whole generation of people. If you have that mindset, pursuing the greater good, no matter how much of a struggle it is, and knowing that you're doing it for the right reasons, and at the end you could conquer greatness no matter what it is you're going for. And that's true of all aspects of life, not just political ideology and business and stuff like that. It's just true of being a human being, I would say.
Yeah, great things great things did not come about from people hedging their bets. Great things came about from people putting it all on the line and putting all the chips on the table and rolling the dice. And a lot of times we don't know anything about the ones that paid the price, that put it all on the line, and it didn't work out very well, but they still paid the price. They still played. They still got out there. Most of the founding fathers, one of the, what's his name? I'll come of it here in a second. He was the wealthiest man in the colonies. He was one of the signers of the Declaration. I believe he was from Delaware. He is the one when Washington needed to cross the Delaware on, Christmas Eve. this was the gentleman they called upon to buy the boats. He's the one that put up the collateral that actually got the boats that took Washington and his men across the Potomac. And I forget this gentleman's name. He's one of the founding fathers, one of the signatories on the Declaration of Independence. He was at that point, he was the wealthiest man in the colonies, and he ended up in debtor's prison. literally ended up in prison in the country that he gave everything for, and ended up in debtor's prison and died a broken man. And I'll think of his name. I'm sorry, I can't think of it right now. But
that's why I named the book "The Struggle for America," because with all things in life, it's usually there's some kind of struggle you got to get through to advance a cause. And with everything the country's going through, from the forces, economically, militarily, just educationally, just all the different policy issues, illegal immigration, the attack on oil and natural gas, which boosts the lifeblood of the economy, all those detailed issues. It's a struggle to fight for the right thing in those policies, but that's the whole point. The struggle for America is you get through that struggle, and then you come through it with a better society at the end if you can navigate your way through all the turmoil of the political world and so on. So that's kind of why I named the book "The Struggle for America," because there's always a struggle, whether it's in life, whether it's in embracing a free government and so on. So it's very philosophical, I would say, and it's just you can trace most things back to that struggle. And if you can get through it, if you can just fight your hardest to get through it, you can have a better outcome at the end.
I agree. I mean, I think back, another founding father was Abraham Clark. His wife name, ironically, his name was Sarah. They had adult sons that ended up fighting for the colonies in the Revolution and ended up getting captured by the British. Yeah. And the famous story is that his sons ended up on the Yorktown, the British ship, the Yorktown, I forget the name of the boat, but anyway, it was an infamous prison ship that the British had, that they put colonials or rebellion, the rebels or anything like that. They would put them on the boat, and it was absolutely horrific. Most people that went on the boat, they never survived. It was horrific conditions. And what was really interesting about the story was these were the two sons of Abraham and Sarah, and they were both captured. And the British knew exactly where Abraham was, and he was a signer on the Declaration of Independence, so he was to be hung. Yeah. And the British decided they weren't going to hang Abraham or Sarah, but what they wanted was, and they held their sons captive and held them for ransom, and this is all they wanted. And they approached Abraham and Sarah several times, and they said, all you've got to do is disown the Declaration of Independence. Speak out against it. Say it was a mistake that you signed it. We will free your sons, and you will and you'll get all your property back. You will no longer be chased as an outlaw. All your sins will be forgiven. And Abraham and Sarah knew that their sons were being starved to death on this horrible boat. Yeah. Now, it's easy to tell the story. And for those that have kids, maybe it's a little more personal, but, I want you to listen to the words. This man and his wife, the father and mother of these two boys, these were young men. They were in their teens. They were starving to death in unbelievably horrible conditions. And all Abraham had to do, the only thing he had to do, Abraham Clark, the only thing he had to do was denounce the Declaration of Independence, and his sons would be returned. He'd get all of his property back, and he'd no longer be an outlaw. That's all he had to do. Yeah. And he refused to do it.
And that's the true ethos of the patriotic spirit that the country has. And that's you can put that up against somebody like a Benedict Arnold, who, when it got tough, when the struggle got really tough, he folded and he went to the British and became a sympathizer to the British crown. And then he ended up, once the colonists, the Americans, won the war, he ended up living in exile in London for the rest of his life. And it just shows you, no matter how hard it is, you gotta stick through it, because if you're fighting for liberty and freedom and something greater than yourself, if you're fighting for the United States, for the Republic, over the tyranny of a imperialistic British Empire, it's worth it to stick it out, because history is going to judge you as a patriot. They're not going to judge you as a traitor, like how we see Benedict Arnold. So it's and that stuff is crucial, and it's what's built the country to be so resilient in the face of all the different onslaughts that we see just in modern times. But there's a reason we're the greatest country in the world. It's because we were built by the greatest era of war fighters and people that just wanted to stand up for a individualistic constitution, not a royal based, English based dictatorship. They wanted a free society where they could choose to do with their money what they wanted, where they could own firearms to protect themselves, where they could invest in industry to benefit their families and their communities, and they didn't want to live in a society where they were serfs, they were peasants and slaves to a feudal system and to a corrupt system. So it's great. You can tie all these historical things back to the modern day, and it gives you can give you a lot of hope in a time of chaos and disarray, I guess. But
yeah, no, it is. I mean, a lot of people don't even realize that during the time of the Revolutionary War, citizens that were loyal to the colonies and were fighting for freedom, they burned their businesses down. They burned their farms down when they saw the British were coming, and they realized, the British were going to be able to utilize their stuff, their food or their supplies. Americans who had it was their businesses, it was their crops. And they knew when they burned it, they would have nothing, no EBT card, nothing. They literally they were burning everything they had.
And they were inspired by God. And if you go back to that's why I love the original American flags, the one of them in particular, the Appeal to Heaven flag.
Yep.
It shows those people, they were getting their drive from a higher force, from a God force, from a force that said, our rights don't come from the British government. They come from the Creator, which is God, and which is the spirit of liberty. And that's why I love the founding flags, the Appeal to Heaven flag, symbolizing a godly civilization, the Don't Tread on Me flag, symbolizing a society free from government control. And there's so much beauty and patriotism in the founding of the country. And there's a lot of people in America now that really embrace that. And there's unfortunately there's people out there that they want to adapt from that. They want to become more like a European style nation, and I want to be like the founders, and a lot of people agree with that as well. And it's kind of it leads to that battle that we're in, which is it's American nationalism versus progressive globalism, I would say, and all kinds of stuff. So but yeah, no, you can learn a lot from the American founding fathers, and I specifically write about them in one of my chapters, because it's important to understand the political fight today by understanding the founders. So it's definitely crucial.
That's fantastic. So when do you have like a date we're shooting for when your book is going to be finished? What does it kind of look like? Do you have a
No, I'm not 100% sure on that. I've spoken to some of the people with Defiance about like what the back of the book is going to say, and the cover, what the cover design is going to be like, and the about the author section. But I haven't gotten the details on specifically when it's going to come out. But obviously,
so you're going through the editing process and everything.
Yes, I'm in the process of the editing. I'm in the editing process now.
Yeah, so it's a little early on. I know you just came on very recently, and it takes a little bit because you got to get everything right. And, they try to get that done within, 7-8 months or so. And I know your book is a little longer, so it's going to take a little bit longer to get the editing, formatting, and all those different things done, that the process is to go through. But we're excited about your book. Lisa's excited about it. I think that, we're going to really talk it up. I think it's very important for people to get this book and to read it and, and pass it down as gifts and get them for your kids and your grandkids and your family members. And, quit buying junk out there and stupid toys. Start buying books. This would be a great place to start. Create an environment within your family. If you're a grandparent, start it with your kids and if you haven't done it yet, okay, start now. Don't say, well, I wish I'd have done that when my kids were young. Well, they're older now, so start it now. Don't do that stuff. Stop buying junk. Stop buying stupid toys and start buying books. Inspire your kids, inspire your grandkids to read, even if they don't like to read. Start buying them books. And this would be a great book to start with. Go to defiancepress.com and you can see a lot of our other authors and books and stuff, but you want to keep Alec in mind. He's a great young man. He's done a great book here. I mean, Lisa was very impressed with it. She's very impressed with his work. This is a nonfiction. And it's got, how many footnotes you got? I mean, the
164.
Yeah. So this book, he's like got it researched. I mean, it's like it's tight. It's tight. It's a great book.
Yeah.
It's a great book. And when you talk about Alec's book and keep posted with it, how can people reach you, Alec?
So I have an Instagram, which I'm going to promote it on my Instagram account. It's Alec Musacchio 2016. So I'm going to be posting
Musacchio. By the way, I'm going to put your name and all that stuff when I post this video, when I post this conversation up, this podcast session, I'll post up, but I'm going to put your all your information and your name and all that, but spell Alec Musacchio, please. I want people to come to your email or to your Instagram. I want the people to reach out to you right now.
So it's AlecMusacchio 2016. So that's my Instagram account, and I'll be posting about the book on there, and I'll be updating, and obviously when it gets released, I'll be putting it out on that, and I'll obviously reach out to others and stuff to help me get it out there and everything. But that's the best spot to see me post about it, at least.
Okay, what can people that are watching this right now that want to help you out with your book and help promote you, and what's some of the best ways that people can help you right now build your brand, get the word out, talk about your book? How can people help you right now?
Yeah, so if you're into conservative politics and Republican oriented politics and you love the United States and you're politically active, if you can just get it out there through any means necessary, just to say that there's this new book that's up and coming, and I really want to try and reach out to some bigger figures, because I interned with a congresswoman, and I know her decently, so I want to reach out to certain political figures and political groups about it and stuff like that. And it's a perfect book for somebody who's patriotically inclined and then they're into current events and so on. I like to link it to like in the early, when the country started, Thomas Paine wrote Common Sense. It was all about like a rallying cry for early Americans to fight against British tyranny. And then I also think of like Barry Goldwater's Conscience of a Conservative in the 1960s, which
was look at you
fight against like just the rise of big government in the 60s, and it became a big. So it's a book like that. It's a political book, but it's oriented towards people that embrace. They embrace less government. They want a society built on entrepreneurship and private industry, and where the government is utilized to help the average citizen, not to enrich the government. And so just any way people could post about it and get it out there. And this is my first book, obviously, so it's a learning process for me too. But just any way to get it out there, as many people as possible. And I'm going to try and reach out to some organizations that specialize in conservative Republican politics and so on. But
yeah, and that's a great point, Alec. Also, so any of you guys that are watching this or listening to this, hey, if you belong to an organization or something like that, listen, reach out to Alec, have him come in as a speaker, or you can do it. Now we got Zoom meeting stuff. Let's say you're in Arizona. you can connect with Alec, get a Zoom meeting set up, put him on a big screen TV in front of your organization or something like this. Alec will do a great job for you. And he's just one of these young people that's going to really give you a lot of encouragement and make you feel good about the future versus looking at, a lot of the folks and go, oh my God, my grandkids are toast. No, I don't believe that. Like I said, Alex is a great example. And what's nice about Alec is, obviously he is unique, but what I'm saying is there's other Alex out there. Alec is not alone. I think he'd be the first one to tell you there's a lot of young people like Alec that are doing what he's doing, that are making an impact. They're good. They're solid. They're, these are good young people that are really seeing what's going on and wanting to dive in and be responsibly irresponsible. And
this book, it's just tapping into that energy of political resistance and anti-elitist populism. I'm tapping into this movement that's growing throughout the country of people that are sick of big government, and they want to live in a society where 1776 style values are embraced, not thrown away. And there's definitely an audience for this type of book, and there's tons of people out there that I think would enjoy it, and it can give you a little bit of a framework on how to have a society that embraces nationalistic patriotism, integrity, and limited government. And so I learned a lot when I was writing this book too, because I did a lot of research and went through a lot of different sources, whether it be think tanks or different news articles and stuff. So it was really an educational time to write this thing, and I loved it. I loved every second of writing it, and that's why I want to keep doing it as I get older. And I plan on writing more and more books as I get older, and by the end of my life, I want to have a great amount, a huge number of books that I've written just based on how the conservative movement, the libertarian movement, how it's progressed over time, and how it's changed, and the trials and tribulations it's gone through to enrich the citizenry with values that patriots love and don't take for granted. So it's definitely a book for people out there, and I would just love to get it to as many people as possible, obviously. And a lot of it comes from Defiance and from you, Mark. You guys have really helped, and it's been really great to just have a partner in this opportunity.
Well, you're in a great spot. We've got a great team. Lisa is a true inspiration. She is extremely knowledgeable, not just book smart on it, but she's actually a multi-best-selling author. She has sold a ton of books personally, and she's still active in that. So she brings to the table a ton of experience for you, Alec. That
definitely.
Man, I
really like the fact that you guys are based out of Texas, because I'm a New Yorker, obviously, but there's a lot of New Yorkers that embrace the culture of Texas and just the independence of the Texas people. So it was extra cool that it was a Texas company that I get to work with, because I have a great amount of respect for your state, and if there was ever any type of civil unrest in this country, one of the places I'd want to be is Texas. So,
hey man, in the spirit of William Travis and the Alamo.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to.
Yeah, and Goliad and Come and Take It, and the great heritage of Sam Houston and the freedom fighter
spirit, definitely.
San Jacinto battle and the birth of Texas, and and these are things we've got to embrace, and these are things, and it's done through books and writing. I'm just a huge proponent in people reading, and I'm not talking about reading memes on your freaking social media. Stop it.
It's big difference between books. Yeah, and I'm an endless reader, so I have a wide variety of different types of books in my collection and stuff, and whether it's history or current events, or I'll be reading for the rest of my life, because the more you read, the more you understand, and the more you read, the more you realize you have to read more to get a better idea of what's actually going on in the world and stuff. There's a lot of great books out there. So
Exactly. No, you're absolutely right. And I couldn't agree with you more. And we've got to create that. And you look back at the founders and you look at the great leadership that America produced back in the 1700s after the Great Awakening. But it was
they
a
were great
renaissance.
writers, and they were
great,
very
prolific writers and readers. Man, they just read, and they read the classics, and they self-educated.
And they understood that a society is best suited when its values are entrenched by God, by a higher creator, not by bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. They knew that. They knew it wasn't perfect, obviously, but they knew that was the perfect ideal to strive for. And
exactly. And they knew that it was going to be tyrannical. They knew it wasn't perfect. They knew that all government feeds itself to self-preserve itself, and it automatically turns on the people. And that's why they gave us the opportunity within the founding documents. Hey, when this happens, you got to overthrow it. You got to overthrow it, because it's going to happen. And that's where we're at. And so we've got to create this great spirit of the founding fathers and the love of freedom and liberty, and just understanding what those concepts are. Not sitting around saying,
being able to create your own destiny, not having outside forces lecture you on what to do and tell you how to live your life, but being able to create it in your own individualistic way. And that's the essence of the country.
Right. Not threatening people that if you don't turn on their EBT cards, they're going to mug you in the parking lot and steal your crap. This is ridiculous. And I wish these were one-offs. I wish these were just a handful of people across the country that are crazy, that the police can just pick up, lock up, and throw away the key, and we never see them again. Unfortunately, this is the sentiment of millions of people, millions.
Yeah, it's
millions of people in our country today, right now.
And the reason it's gotten bigger because a lot of our institutions have been captured by radical forces, whether it be the colleges, the media out there, or a lot of the big money,
all the public schools run by
the big money institutions and the elites in charge. They've echoed into the airwaves just a sentiment of essentially a Bolshevikism and rising up against the rich. But it really is just it's a promise to create a dystopic big government nanny state, and it's people like me aren't going to stand for it. And there's millions of people like us out there that aren't going to stand for a big government nanny state. And no matter what the powers to be say, there's going to be resistance to that, and there's always going to be an embrace of classical liberalism, which is the freedom of religion, the freedom of speech, freedom to own a gun, freedom to start a business, to freedom to have oil and natural gas thrive, not be turned into electric only. And there's a lot of people that want freedom out there, and it can happen in all sorts of ways.
It is happening. And I'm excited about the future. One way or the other, we're going to get it fixed. Freedom is going to win. And we're just thrilled and excited, Alec, that first of all, that you're part of the Defiance team. Yeah. And we're excited about this podcast and getting it out there. And we're going to have you back. And I want you to be thinking about different things that we can do, and that what this would look like if we launched some sort of a TPUSA type of program to affect young people and things like that. And we would love for you to be a part of that if that's something we decide to move into. And I think that's something we would definitely like to look into. So, but man, we just really appreciate you joining us, man. And this is fantastic.
You guys are a great organization to be a part of, especially with publication and publishing my book. And you guys it's very honest. It's very clear that you guys are patriotic, and it's great to be a part of a company like that. So I really appreciate it, Mark.
Well, thank you, Alec, and we're looking forward to talking again soon.